Hi, welcome to my new YouTube video channel. Welcome to Geopolitical Analysis. What sparked my interest to start this video were a few things that seem to have slipped from the coverage of mainstream media on the topic of Turkish invasion in Syria. So I'll try to shed some light. I know this is a complicated situation, but the illegal operation of Turkey contains a manifold of events that relate to the Syrian tragedy. We must understand that the agreed upon triangles between Moscow, Damascus, Ankara, and Washington with the Kurds has to do with the dispersing of the Kurds, control over energy resources, and remodeling of global power structures. First thing I want to jump into is the use of private military and mercenaries in the region. We know for a fact that MARSOC, the American Private Marine Corporation, has been spotted in Raqqa operating with a coalition of Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces since 2016, along with the use of private Russian Wagner Group, which has recently been in hot waters due to footage showing torture and beheading. Most importantly, though, the presence of Turkish private group Sadat with Kazakhstani and Azerbaijani soldiers, many who have exhibited similar extremist behavior such as ISIS and Daesh soldiers, with beheading, raping, and dragging as trophies dead bodies around. Not to mention the releasing of ISIS fighters and their families by those forces. So this wasn't your traditional standard war, but an insurgence of private groups with private interests. For many years, the deep state of Turkey and President Erdogan, who has been spearheading this project, desired the displacing of the Kurds and total suppression. Turkey a year ago was demanding millions of visas from the EU in order to give Kurds a chance to find a life better elsewhere. The Turkish Kurds are young, fight-ready, and also a thorn to Erdogan's establishment. The numbers of Turkish Kurds, as you can see, are 15 million. After examining the GDP income of the Turkish Kurds, which is estimated to be less than $5,000 annually, I couldn't help but notice that it's below the poverty threshold of the UN. Meanwhile, the Turkish population, based on World Bank statistics in 2018, is above $15,000 a year. That is exactly the triple that the Kurds have in Turkey. So we can understand that there's been a systematic disparaging economic warfare against them in order to force them out of the country. We need to understand that President Erdogan is operating as a businessman by expanding his interests and that of Turkish petroleum. Turkish petroleum has expanded from Africa, the Middle East, and Eurasia. So it's no surprise that Sadat, which is not to be confused as a paramilitary group or equivalent of a mercenary group, was founded after 2012 to impose Erdogan and Turkey's private interests in the Middle East. So let's examine Sadat for a second. Sadat's founder was Brigadier General Adnan Tanriverdi, who definitely didn't have any training or experience in special forces. So that indicates that the inception of Sadat did not have the intent to operate as a mercenary group or as a solely militaristic group, but as a means, as Brigadier Army does, is to provide geostrategic expertise in building bridges, construction, war conditions, underwater control, and creating blockages, all which constitute modern types of warfare. So this is an indication again that Sadat came to existence as an entity of pursuing otherwise illegal activity under Turkish legal contracts. Now, Adnan Tanriverdi, by law, could not be the commander anymore of Sadat because of his position as a general in the past. So that's why Erdogan positioned him as his right hand in the Security Council. So we need to understand that Erdogan through Sadat is using these services for his own private interest. And what I mean by that is that Sadat shouldn't be seen as a military group. It should be seen as a private group that is expanding the opportunity to extract and exploit the resource of the area. And it is done in a fashion of, surprise, surprise, Halliburton. The blueprint is harrowingly similar. And I say this because Sadat has been used to destabilize geographic areas in the Middle East in order to advance in any region that is rich in petroleum, oil, gas, gold, and also uranium. So energy companies, we need to understand, cannot really control an area in a country that is strong and sovereign. It is preferred that countries are destabilized in order to make use of the region and be in utter control, given that the governments are susceptible to bribing, and also when a government is crippled, it cannot have the uniform strategy and be much more organized. So this is an operation that really creates war conditions in whichever region, again, Erdogan is interested to draw resources. Exactly the equivalent, like I mentioned, of Halliburton. So the second point I want to mention that we didn't hear much about was the use of chemical weapons and white phosphorus. These are indications through Twitter and other sources of children who have life-threatening injuries, women who have been abused and crimes against them, releasing ISIS fighters and their families. Things that indicate that Turkey is not a good ally and, if anything, doesn't really respect international law and human rights. Even during Trump and Erdogan press release, after they had agreed to a ceasefire, at that point, Turkish forces were actually advancing beyond the safety zone. And I believe it was the officer of the SDF army called Mazlum Abdi who reported through Twitter that there were several incidences of attacking Christian towns in Syria and also destroying churches and going about different other crimes against humanity. Now, when Erdogan was asked about this during the press conference, he said that something between the lines that the army will secure the cities and will rebuild the churches. Now, that alone indicates again that this is not a country that respects agreements, treaties, or alliances, because at that moment, the Turkish forces were advancing in those cities and attacking, even though there was a common understanding that there was a truce going on. But finally, what I want to bring up is, why isn't anybody mentioning why U.S. handed Syria over to Russia? Could we be witnessing a mini energy Yalta conference of the energy companies to adapt to the huge demand of gas and oil? Is it perhaps that the U.S. found what it was looking for elsewhere? So let me throw in an energy conglomerate in the mix to understand better what's going on in this whole region. BP, British Petroleum, and the name of Nursultan Nazarbayev, the ex-president of Kazakhstan, who changed things at the Kashagan oil field agreement, which since 1992 discovered to contain undersea tens of billions of oil barrels in capacity. Among the largest energy companies, BP sold its shares and left the Caspian oil field. Ever since, it has been missing out on the biggest Eurasian oil resource. So recently we know that there was research that indicated much bigger source than BP had originally thought existed. So this has led to Erdogan, who has been working hand in hand with BP to shake the waters in Syria and push Trump to secure the oil reserves in Syria. Because BP has lost the opportunity to rejoin that Kashagan oil field. We know that there were many other conglomerates that have joined, and there's a dispute from BP's side because it really wants to regain part of that mega oil field. So let me make this clear to you. BP and Turkish Petroleum are actually energy partners in a lot of Middle Eastern oil fields. So we need to understand that it's not by accident that Erdogan had welcomed the BP CEO at the time, Mr. Dudley, and we understand now why Sadat is being an instrument used to create imbalance and satisfy simultaneously these energy companies. That just like any hedge funds, for example, manage risk by hedging to stabilize their investments, energy companies likewise require war to bring balance between any disagreements in the sharing of energy resources. Pipelines cannot cross through countries sovereign, but through puppet countries. Now we can fully understand why Trump ordered the US soldiers to be transferred in northern Raqqa in Syria, which, surprise, surprise again, Turkish Petroleum has also investment in Rumaila oil field in Iraq, the exact pipeline that begins from Iraq and passes through Afrin, which, let me remind you, was the first point of control for Turkey and Syria. It is therefore not by accident, of course, that the securing of oil reserves and oil pipelines began across Syria, even from Iraq, to secure that investment and secure that distribution between the energy companies. Maybe that's why Mike Pence recently visited Iraq. Uh, so we need to understand that geopolitics is really the control and distribution of goods. Whoever controls that controls the world economy. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up, and if you like the video, please subscribe. As for my next topic, I'd like to disclose to you that I'll be presenting the unofficial union of Erdogan and the global storm that is about to begin. Thanks so much.